What's up? It's me, your boy, Lumbersnack. And I've got a haircut, finally, because it was making me look wild and feral, is the word I would use to describe it. Welcome to my channel, where I have extraordinarily hot takes on religion, all in the name of satisfying the one true God who, bestows truth and knowledge onto the world and wants it to be known how it becomes known. And today we're looking back at my name for my faith, and that's Normanism, right? Normanism, Gnostic Mormonism. But let's dwell on that Mormonism aspect for it, because was Joseph Smith an actual prophet of God? And is there actual merit within the Book of Mormon? And I think yes. I am emphatically and absolutely 100% in believable that Joseph Smith was a prophet ordained by, like this was Moroni, definitely, I think. And then that's just the one, who kind of rules over. Oh, that's the one. It's a very lucid study in spirituality, metaphysics, religion, because there's definitely duality, but it all coalesces into that one, and that's kind of like the universal truth in all religions. Despite what some people might think, those people are wrong. Those people are super wrong. But exactly who was Joseph Smith, and why do I think he was a prophet of God? First and foremost, Joseph Smith lived in New York. That has no bearance as to whether or not he's a prophet or not. That's just a statement. 1805, I believe, or 1800? 1805, I believe, is when he was born. And in the year 1820, Joseph Smith, frustrated that he couldn't tell what the true religion of God was, what church to go to. And God told him none of them. And I genuinely believe that. That's just my own personal thoughts. But basically he told him to go into the woods and pray. Or at least, he felt he needed to go into the woods and pray. And when he went into the woods, at 14 years old, he was bound by an extreme dark presence that just held him to the ground, filling him with terror and fright. And I can genuinely say I've felt that exact same thing before. Not the whole shebang that he went through, but definitely the near paralysis of like something on the other realm, or however you want to explain it, seizing you. I hold to it. And then, he was praying or sobbing or something, and then he saw, God and Jesus, which is chill. It happens. Some people do that. And they basically, I think that's where they told him that all churches were wrong and that he needed to develop his own faith, or that, he needed to restore it. Which he's just like, okay, he's a 14-year-old. His family is extremely entrenched in folk magic, which the heart of Mormonism that you must understand is that it was bred from white people folk magic. I truly think. Which is why I kind of like agree with certain parts of the validity. Namely, Joseph Smith Jr. came from a very prominent family. His grandfather fought in the, American War of Independence. And from his grandfather's stories where Joseph Smith really, loved and really held dear the preachings of liberty and being able to think for yourself and being freed of the shackles of the mind. Now, it's never stated, but Joseph Smith Sr. was definitely a Freemason. I would guarantee it. And I think he was a high-level one. I think he was a high-level Freemason as well. Because shortly after Joseph Smith was, revealed that he was supposed to be the prophet, Hyrum Smith joined the Freemasons in 1820s, which Hyrum Smith would have been the oldest kid at this point, because their older brother Alvin died, which is sad. But Theodore and Simon, the other chipmunks, well, That's sad. You know, there's a lot of sadness in the world, and that's an upsetting thing, but it happens. Um, but flash forward, you know, we're talking about Joseph Smith, whether he was a prophet or not. He is visited randomly by this being of pure whiteness, you know, which is something that has commonly been tossed about an angel or anything. And keep in mind, the angel never actually identifies itself. They and everyone kind of around them just assume that it's Moroni from the Book of Mormon. Some mispublications say it was Nephi, which is whatever, you know. Most notably, it was probably the angel Gabriel, right? Because if you look at all the Mormon churches and temples, there's an angel on top, and he's, you know, blowing his horn, which was Gabriel's thing. And of course, Gabriel was the angel who basically talked to Muhammad in the cave, and, you know, was there presently the entire time, you know, Muhammad is piecing together his Quran, that is a gift from God. Genuinely, I say unto you, the Quran is a gift from God. And so there's that dichotomy. But basically tells Joseph Smith that, dude, all these religions are bogus. BTW, Jesus, or the one, however people want to describe it, Quetzalcoatl, I believe, is like the Mesoamerican thing. I'm pretty sure Quetzalcoatl was like an actual thing and not just like some random BS that like the Spaniards tossed about. Like Quetzalcoatl was the Mesoamerican deity who ruled benevolently for like 500 years or so. And he basically allegedly, he rose out of the water on his plumed serpents, or with his plumed serpents. And he's just a really white dude with a really white beard, and basically just was chill. And then I don't know if it was like once they started sacrificing humans that he was like, okay guys, I'm out. Or if it was in response to him leaving that they did that. Because, you know, at the end of the day, the name of the game is syncretism. Is how do all these things combine, which, you know, Joseph Smith. Back to Joseph Smith. I'm a scatterbrain, you know. I'm someone who just, I try my hardest to just let this little guy right in here just like lead the way. I really do. I try my very hardest when I go to speak and perform and present to just let this guy lead the way. And I think everyone should do that. I think that's like the evolution of all religion, is just to do exactly that. Is just listen to that guy in there. But basically Joseph Smith is told that he needs to go to this place on September 22nd, which I'm big on numerology, so I'm like, all right, cool. So we're more in my wheelhouse for things that I generally accept as spirituality and ways that God interacts with humanity, as documented by the Greeks, by the Jews, by the Chaldeans, by the Arabs, by all these freaking groups. You know, I'm not wrong, probably. I'm less wrong than the atheists, I think. That being said, Joseph Smith, that little guy, basically he's just told to keep coming back, and then on like the fourth time, you know, I think he brings his I mean, at one point he brought one of his treasure hunting buddies, who was probably not a good dude. But, you know, Joseph Smith Jr. wasn't the only, you know, looking glass or, you know, seer stone person in his family. His family had a long history of, you know, using seer stones, which is why he believed so intently that he could receive messages from the reflections, which was the whole point of it. That was the whole point. And so basically, eventually, he's allowed to take these plates out. He's not allowed to show them to anybody. God makes him promise that. He is not to show them to anybody. Or less God, more, you know, the angel Moroni. Was it Gabriel? You tell me. But the angel Moroni, which also, I think, kind of designates the Book of Mormon as the Moronic Gospel, which I think is my understanding of God. Like, at least this dude, the one that would go about being, you know, angels and like speaking directly for God, which is more often than not this dude specifically, on key. he's also a trickster guy. It would be hilarious if the intent of the Book of Mormon was to be known as the Moronic Gospel. I think that would be hilarious. And that's only if you take it literally and seriously, because I personally only view it as a book speaking prophecy of the coming years from, 1827. Like, there's a whole spectacle around it, but like at the end of the day, it's just, that God speaking and pouring directly through here. Again, not just a normal family. These are a family with deep, like, Masonic roots and, like, religious spirituality notes. To the point where Moroni basically tells him that eventually he's going to be tempted because of his family's past and their affiliation spiritually, which I truly believe was the Freemasons. I do, because the Freemasons are a religious organization before anything else. And they're pretty, I think the Freemasons and the Jews have been at war for like centuries now. At the heart of it, I think that's actually the case. Because I truly think that one of the reasons that Joseph Smith, had his whole enlightening and like being told that he needed to translate this book, whether, the text is real or not, he's got witnesses. He's got even Martin Harris, who testified to it on his deathbed. And Martin Harris had every reason to discredit the name of Joseph Smith, and had discredited the name of Joseph Smith for a long period of time because of things Joseph Smith did that he should have been discredited for. Like, let's see here. And keep in mind that the Christian, Judeo, whatever morality lands on the fact that King David is this prophesied king where his descendant is going to be the Messiah, right? Prophesied king, anointed. I buy it. I absolutely buy it. He has 20 kids. And then for some of those kids, he has an adulterous affair. Keep in mind, this is when he, basically said, I don't need the Lord. I only need knowledge of this one, and now I am God. And that's when he cheated. And that's when he's like, Lord, I'm such a bastard. I'm such a fool for having done that. That's what King David said. And the Lord, being merciful, is like, all right, man. Yeah, it's whatever, but, now you've unleashed something. And of course he did, because that's how Solomon got born. And then from Solomon, he had like tons of wives and concubines, but he absolutely had Menelik. He absolutely had Menelik. He is it's a Judeo back into Africa type thing. But more than that, Rehoboam had like 88 kids, and like Abraham's whole point was that his kids were supposed to pass their seed amongst all people in the entire world. It's not that out of the realm to suggest that pretty much everybody who looks like me, or in this kind of like realm of like Europe through, Samaria, all the way out to a lot of Africa, are likely just related to King David. They could even just be one person off and you're still descended from the line of King David, right? That's how it works. But anyhow, Joseph Smith as the American prophet. A big part of his religion and why it's important is because there has always been strife towards the First Amendment of the United States of America, which is above and away the thing that we were founded upon, which is the right of speech, to say what you want to say, regardless of who you offend. 2, the right to your religion and to how you believe and view God. And more importantly, that Congress shall not, or any power associated with Congress, shall ever make an effort to establish a national religion. Which is why every single person on the MAGA team who says that this is a Christian nation, they are in lawsuit territory. They are in actual legal battle territory for anybody who is not Christian in this nation to sue the entire administration. Whether I'm going to do that, I probably won't. Unless they come after me, that's cool. But Joseph Smith, I'm scatterbrained, That's all I do is study God and like think about the knowledge and all this. But Joseph Smith, yeah, what a freaking guy. I think he was a lot more honest than people give him credit for. For instance, he definitely had an affair with like multiple women. which I am against. But like that was the whole David and Solomon thing, was the polygamy and the multi-marriage. But I do think a big part of like him was to head up a religion to purge the two, like a few of the major barbarisms of religion, which is slavery and plural marriage and polygamy. Which those are now eradicated. Good job, world, at least in America, or they're supposed to be. But yeah, and so he starts getting associated as a polygamist, which no doubt discredits his stances, makes him seem less honest, which is an important facet. In 1838 is when they had the Missouri War and the Mormon Extermination Order, meaning that you could kill Mormons on sight. Now, why did they have this rule? Was it truly because they're a den of polygamists? No, it was not. It's because their religion taught friendship and friendliness to the Native Americans and gave them power, that they tended to vote all together, and so they were able to control a strong part of the voting process. They had a different religion, which a lot of people don't like it when you have a different religion. It's a real bad thing, even though I'll freaking argue it every day of the week. Catholicism is the most inherently wicked religion out there. I despise Catholicism, and I think my Mormon upbringing has to do with it, because a big part of it's just very against the Catholic Church, very against Catholicism. That's like the biggest thing that it's against, is Catholicism, more than anything. But yeah, so the Mormons had to leave Missouri, which is, the fun thing about their view on Missouri. Independence, Missouri, which is the name of the city. Awesome. That was revealed to Joseph Smith to become Zion. Keep in mind, this is like 1830s. This is 1830s. A big reason I think Joseph Smith was called to be his prophetness or whatever is because right at the start of the 1820s, that's when the first wave of like mass Jewish migration came into America from, I think, Germany and a few other places. And like I said, beef with the Freemasons. The Freemasons founded America. They fought in the Independence War. I don't care what people say. America was founded by the Freemasons. Before the Native Americans, but they just had their own stuff. But yeah, he had a vision that he needed to restore Zion for all the children of Israel, for all the Jews, followers of the Abrahamic faith, right there in Independence, Missouri, and stretching all the way. They didn't like that. But I do think the third temple is going to be built there, like the one that's prophesied. I'd like to help make that happen, personally. But anyhow, then flash forward to 1843, Joseph Smith decides that it's time to run for president. He's pretty young at the time, right at the youngest age that you can. And he has this extraordinarily radical platform that he wants to be on. And the radical platform is that he wants to federally end slavery by using federal funds to purchase slaves from the slave owners and give them and grant them their freedoms. He wanted to eliminate the Federal Reserve and establish a new bank, for some freaking reasons. He wanted to ensure that the First Amendment, freedom, liberty, the right to believe what you want to believe, that is the biggest foundational value. And a few things. Honestly, he had a really good platform, I personally think. At least decent, especially by today's standards. And especially since he was the only person against slavery on the docket, on the campaign trail or whatever. But then a newspaper opened up in his town, wrote their first. They opened up because they hated Joseph Smith. It's just a group that just hates people or something. I mean, yeah, polygamy is bad. Don't cheat on your wife or girlfriend. That's a given. They released a paper about Joseph Smith's polygamy. He, of course, responds by sending his militia, because he has a militia at this point. You know, the Mormons were a force to be reckoned with. He sends the militia to burn down the newspaper place. Everyone's pissed. Naturally, they're more worried that, like, Civil War has just started. And, like, the new... Oh, wait, no, I'm thinking about the Utah War. No? I think they sent somebody in. Oh, also 1842, 2 years after Joseph Smith's father died, frickin' A, he joins the Freemasons. Not only does he join the Freemasons, he's inducted to the Freemasons by one of Abraham Lincoln's closest friends who vouched for him in a very critical moment that Lincoln needed someone to vouch for him. To me, a true showing forth that the path of God and what's necessary gets illuminated to those it needs to be revealed to. His name was Abraham Jonas, I think. Yeah, Abraham Jonas. Immediately gives Joseph Smith a Master Mason status pretty much the same day. Just on sight, just on likely family ties as well, you know, is a big part of it. And it's from this point that they bring a bunch of Freemasonry rituals. Him and Brigham Young bring a bunch of Freemasonry rituals into the Mormon church. And then, you know, Joseph Smith doesn't get caught by the police. He willingly turns himself in because he feels prompted to, or he's told to. And then a lynch mob came and killed him and his brother. You know, it happens. It happens. But then what's interesting after that is you get told about how, the Mormons then, led by Brigham Young, go across the Rocky Mountains to Salt Lake City, and they enact slavery because God gave them the right to enact slavery, and all this crap that's false, and it's bad. And the Church of Salt Lake is a wicked organization at the heart. You know why? In 1900 or 1905, keep in mind, the LDS Church, the reorganized Latter-day Saint Church, which now goes by the Community of Christ, they actually won a legal battle to say that they are the true religion that was originally founded by Joseph Smith. So all the Mormon stuff about Salt Lake City and everything that they believe, that is not a reflection of Joseph Smith's original, religion. The Community of Christ Church, which is in Independence, Missouri, and a few other places. Likely Nauvoo probably has one, and a few other Mormon-centric areas. But it was started by Emma Hale, his first and, most beloved wife, is what he would say. And their son, which was his first son to make it into being alive, because he had 3 sons before Joseph Smith III, or 3 kids anyhow, and they all died. The fourth, Joseph Smith III, when he was 11 years old, after his dad had been arrested, or when he was about to be arrested for something to do with the Missouri War, he put his hands on Joseph Smith III's head and said, "I bestow upon you, and I'm bestowing you the, message of God and the reins to my religion for you to, when you come about and are ready to accept the teachings or the message or whatever part of it, it's yours to take." And Brigham Young took a bunch of Freemasonry, hateful ideas and everything into Salt Lake City. That's a Masonic organization to me. But the church started by Joseph Smith III. It was only started again. It was really started and specified with him as the leader because he said he wouldn't do it unless he felt prompted by the Lord and God. And then 1860 he did, and so that's when he started the Community of Christ. Lo and behold, that's also when the Civil War began, with Utah representing a group of people who brought slavery and are using it for their part of the religion, and the Community of Christ, who naturally was against it. I think. I'm pretty positive they had to have been, because Joseph Smith ran a pretty hard campaign against bondage and slavery. He wasn't he wasn't an abolitionist. He was pretty against, he didn't want to cause a race war, I think is actually what it was about. But yeah, do I think that the Book of Mormon is like the actual translation of an ancient people perfectly? Not really. There's some explanation to how the Book of Mormon came to be, or the brass plates or golden plates, or however you want to put them. But I truly think that it was literally just Joseph Smith letting God give him prophecy written as a book. I really do. And that those events that book should be treated Gnostically as just metaphorical and symbolic. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there. I wouldn't discredit Lehi's vision of the tree of life and the iron rod and the spacious building, But yeah, it's like there's a certain aspect where the true church, in my opinion, and I genuinely, the bit I've researched, I've gotten back into like the foundational parts of my religion, that I turned away from because they felt hollow and bad, and turns out that's just Masonic stuff. Weird rituals like the baptism for the dead, I believe, is specifically Masonic. I wanted to say polygamy was, but apparently it's not. A few other things were Masonic. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. But that's probably gonna wrap up this. I don't know. I kind of just, like I said, I like to ramble. I like to try to teach people true knowledge. At the end of the day, Christianity went through a whole freaking like nut punch, right? Right through a freaking nut punch. Right at the 15th century. This is when Christian Kabbalah started up. This is when a group of Parsi people split into their religion, which is the Sikh people, which are kind of between Pakistan and India, I believe, is in that generalized area. Catholic Church was at an all-time low point. No one's buying their crap anymore. They literally needed to dive back in to pull a bunch of Gnostic texts out, like the Corpus Hermeticum, to justify and say, hey, by the way, Catholicism is the answer. Catholicism is the most wicked church on the planet. I believe that the Book of Mormon testifies to that. I do. And I say these things, hoping to bestow truth and knowledge onto people, whether, my words ring true in their ears or, are met by a hardened heart. That's neither here nor there for me. What's important is speaking and standing up for the freedoms of all people and the liberties that we have been bestowed upon by the highest of authorities that shall not be infringed upon. And we, the good-natured people, need to stand up and fight those evil, wicked powers that want to just destroy everything. And I say these things in the name of all that is holy. Inshallah, may we all succeed.